On Tech News Today, France gives Google 15 days to censor the global internet or else. Plus, Twitter CEO steps down, Android One is failing, and Uber launches a driving game. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, June 12th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit Prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card when you get a loan. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan. Welcome to the show. Our co-anchor today is Mashable Senior Tech Correspondent Christina Warren. How you doing, Christina?
I'm good. I'm back from the Worldwide Developers Conference in San Francisco. I'm back in New York after a kind of ridiculous travel day, and I'm recovering, but I'm good. I'm here.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing that lovely New York area summer weather, springtime weather, to San Francisco. It's actually pretty nice by San Francisco standards. For those of you who aren't familiar with San Francisco, it's usually freezing in the city, even though all the surrounding areas are balmy and lovely. But yeah, it was really nice in the city. And overall, what was your takeaway from Apple's event?
I mean, it was great. I mean, obviously, I personally started off the night before the event with a bit of a high and personal bucket list. I had the opportunity to interview Tim Cook about diversity in Apple. I had a really good time. I went to a bunch of the sessions, and even though I think this is more kind of a talk year in Intel parlance, and Apple is doing a lot of iterative things with the OS, with iOS and OS 10. I'm really excited about Apple Music. I'm super, super stoked that they're going to be doing the Watch OS 2 to bring native apps to the watch. And I mean, all in all, they showed up some great stuff, and every developer that I talked to seemed really excited about what's coming down the pipe. Yeah,
we actually covered your interview on the show. You were not available because you were too busy being a journalist at the show itself. But that was a great story, great scoop. And I really enjoyed it. And, you mentioned Apple Music. So you're actually one of the people who's bullish on this. You think they're going to succeed with it?
I think they are. Ian Rogers, who runs iTunes Radio, he ran Beats Music. And Beats Music, I thought, was actually a really good service. I don't think it's fair to judge its success on its numbers because it was acquired so soon after its launch. And at that point, I think that a lot of people just kind of, obviously for more than a year, investment in it kind of outwardly stopped. So there wasn't much of a rationale for people to subscribe to Beats versus Spotify, for instance. I'm not, sure maybe the final UI will be the perfect thing, but I like the idea of combining all of your purchases, all of your uploaded tracks, and having this a la carte streaming service. I think that is going to be successful. Will it beat Spotify? I don't know. I don't know if it has to in the terms of get people to unsubscribe from Spotify. I really think what they're looking at is, the much, much larger percentage of users who don't have a streaming music service, a subscription at all, who now can subscribe to something through iTunes and get access to everything on their iPhone or Windows or even, in the fall, Android phone. So I think that there's a huge opportunity in streaming, and I'm bullish about it. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I'm hearing things all over the map, including things coming out of my own face, which expressed disappointment in the feature set, I guess, of the app itself. And again, I keep bringing this up on various shows that I've been on, but I think that the great unknown about what they announced for Apple Music is the Connect service. I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know what the response is going to be. I don't know what the response is going to be for people, say, under the age of 20. Maybe this is what they want. I know they don't want BBC Radio.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the Beats One thing is interesting. I think the Connect, look, that I'm not bullish on. I think that's a great idea, but everyone has tried this. Spotify tried it with Follow. Apple tried it before with Ping. The biggest problem is actually getting any of these musicians to use it. And I think that trying to create yet another Twitter and yet another, sort of Facebook thing is problematic. But I do like the idea, at least, of, I like that they're trying to get musicians to use this as a platform, much as the same way they would use YouTube or SoundCloud now. Whether they will or not, I don't know. I'm not that optimistic, optimistic about that. But, at least they're thinking about social, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, all they have to do is make up $3 billion, the $3 billion they paid for Beats in music streaming and downloads. No problem. That should be pretty easy to do. It'll only take them 50 years. All right, well, why don't we jump into the news? Facebook's Oculus VR unveiled the commercial version of its Oculus Rift virtual reality system yesterday. The company emphasized the lightness of the new goggles as well as an overhaul of the design. It looked pretty cool, actually. The company showed games on screen and talked about the future of Oculus. Facebook unveiled also a new virtual reality controller called the Oculus Touch, and the company, surprisingly, unveiled a partnership with Microsoft to work with the Xbox One controller and for the VR to be able to be controllable there. Is there going to be further integration, do you think, Christina, with Xbox One here, or is this it, just the controller?
I certainly hope so. And I think that it would make sense for Microsoft to do that, because obviously they're doing the HoloLens, but that's a little bit different. That's more AR rather than VR. And with Sony getting into the VR space on their own, and obviously kind of having their competing ecosystem, I think that tying into Oculus, which has become kind of the de facto stack for VR stuff, would be really smart, especially also, we see what HTC is doing with Steam. So I hope that they do. I think that would be really smart. I think that using, the Xbox One controller is a really smart idea. That's a fantastic controller. Early, versions of the Oculus Rift have worked really well with the Xbox 360 controller. But I think having that just as an official partnership is smart, and I'm hoping that it will open up the opportunity for some sorts of either mods or kind of further integration. If I could get the Xbox living room experience through the Oculus, that would be really cool as a way to kind of view videos and other services. That would be really awesome, actually.
Yeah, I can't wait till this comes out, and I can't wait to try it. We don't know all the details about this, of course, and people who were at the event didn't get a chance to actually try it, to the best of my knowledge, but we did learn one thing that I think is very welcome news, which is that in the past, the developer version of Oculus Rift was too heavy in the front and not well supported in the back, and it kind of felt like it was pulling your face down. This time, the headset itself is much lighter. The way the strap on the back of the head is actually a little bit of weight, so it actually sits more comfortably on your head. The materials they promised would be very comfortable. So it's looking like the wearability aspect of the 1.0 version of Oculus Rift is actually going to be pretty good, much better than we had seen in the past. So that's good news.
Yeah, no, and I think that's absolutely necessary, because everybody, if you've ever used even the developer versions, you kind of get pulled into the world. You want to use it more and more. And if this is going to become a real product, it's going to be something that you're not going to have you're not going to have a headache after you're done with it. That you're actually going to be able to sit down, on the couch or wherever and be part of this experience. And hopefully we'll E3 is next week, so there's going to be lots more VR news kind of across the map. But I think everybody else was really pleased with what they showed off.
Yeah, it looks like they have solved the headache problem. Now, if they can just solve the vomiting problem, I think they'll have a hit on their hands. Well, if you've got a CEO who's leaving your company like Twitter does, and you want to hire a new CEO, the best place to hire one is on ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter is one of our sponsors today, and they're an awesome site because they're going to save you a ton of time and money and make your life a lot easier. They're going to let you post to 100+ job sites with a single click, and those job sites include social networks like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Google+. LinkedIn's groups are included, Facebook pages are included, and Twitter automatic posting is included as well. They'll instantly match your job search to 4 million database resumes in their database. It's a huge resume database, and their service is used by more than 400,000 businesses. And guess what? You can try it now for free for 4 days. Try ZipRecruiter today with a free 4-day trial and get your perfect candidate before they go to someone else by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. We told you in the past that a French commission wanted Google to extend its right to be forgotten censorship to cover not only the French and European Google search sites, but also all Google search sites worldwide. Now that commission, called the National Commission on Informatics and Liberty, is giving Google 15 days to censor Google search results globally or face a fine of up to 150,000 euros. David Meyer is a tech policy reporter at Politico Europe and joins us now. Welcome to you, David Meyer.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, can you briefly summarize, before we get into your story, what Europe's right to be forgotten rules are all about?
Sure. Well, a year ago, Europe's top court, the Court of Justice of the European Union, ruled that an existing, 1994 data protection law across Europe applied to search engines such as Google. And so it said that Google, which is the biggest search engine in Europe, must honor people's requests to have links taken down if they link to information that's inaccurate, inadequate, irrelevant, or excessive to the purposes of processing, which effectively means if people find stuff embarrassing and there's no public interest in keeping the link up, then Google has to take it down. Now, the scope of the application of this has been in contention for a while. Last year, all the data protection agencies around Europe, which band together in a body called the Article 29 Working Party, they said that the way that they read it, the ruling by Europe's top court, Google must delist these results across the world because it's not effective otherwise. People can just, if they're trying to find something and they can't find it on google.fr for France or .co.uk for the UK, then they can simply go to google.com and bypass that and find this offensive information. Google assembled its own party of expert advisors, and almost all of them said that wasn't correct, that, people around the world are, they have the right to access information according to their own laws, not what European courts say. So this has been coming to a head for a while, and now the French agency, which is quite bullish on data protection and perhaps a bit anti-Google, has decided to actually try and levy a fine if Google doesn't do what it wants in the next 15 days.
Now, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, because obviously this, the French government believes that they can impact things beyond just what's viewable on French servers and on, Google France. What is their legal basis that they believe they have the right to basically censor information, censor results outside of France?
Well, the basis for that is that it simply won't work otherwise. They say that the court's judgment must be properly applied, and it's just not possible to do that unless you censor the results around the world. They say that, Google France is Google US, and therefore it must apply around all of its domains. Obviously, this is deeply problematic, and I think it really, strikes to the heart of one of the biggest conundrums around the internet, which is that you've got this huge global borderless platform, and people are trying to apply their national laws, which obviously, to an extent, they have to be able to, because you can't have different laws for online and offline. That doesn't work in the long term either. But at the same time, they're trying to foist their laws on users around the world, which is deeply problematic as well.
Yeah, and that same logic applies to China, which wants to erase the memory of Tiananmen Square. Same logic applies to, say, Pakistan, which wants to make sure that the Prophet Muhammad is not offended anywhere in the world. And so is there any conversation in France about the danger of establishing a precedent whereby a national government can censor globally for its own reasons or its own values?
Well, I'm not sure about the conversation that's going on in France particularly, but this is something that it's not just the French data protection regulator. This was across the EU. 28 different data protection regulators issued a joint statement last year saying that this should apply globally. So this is something that the French are just the first to actually try and take forward. But you're absolutely right, because you just have to look next to Europe. You have to look at Russia, which at the moment is putting through its own right to be forgotten law, which is a new law, unlike the European thing, which was a case of taking an existing law and saying it applies to search engines as well. And so Russia's bringing through something which is very similar, except without the public interest safeguards. So it's basically saying that if somebody says you must take this down, then you must take this down, and that's that, which it follows on from the European law, but it's subtly much worse.
Now, they're talking about how, finding Google 150,000 euros, which what they make in 30 seconds,
Sure.
who knows? What if Google just pays the fine? What happens then?
I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. Google has a long history of just paying the fine in Europe, and this is one reason why the General Data Protection Regulation, which is a new data protection law that's currently people are trying to currently finalize, why that would raise the potential fines to up to 10%. Actually, I think for stuff like this, serious data protection abuses, up to 10% of global turnover, which obviously would not be something that Google could shrug off. But they probably could shrug this off. I dare say then it might go to the French courts.
Interesting. David Meyer, first of all, I want to congratulate you on moving to Politico. That's a great publication that's doing amazing things these days. We've had a lot of Politico guests recently for that reason. So congratulations on that. And congratulations to Politico for hiring you. That was a good move on their part as well. And secondly, your balcony is awesome.
Yes.
Thanks very much on all those counts.
All right. Well, thanks again. David Meyer is at politico.eu, and you can follow him on Twitter at Superglaze. It's just like it sounds. Thanks again, David.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. Twitter CEO Dick Costolo stepped down yesterday. He'll remain on the Twitter board. Jack Dorsey will step in as interim CEO. Erin Griffith is a writer for Fortune and joins us now to talk about this story. Welcome to you, Erin.
Hi.
Now, did Dick Costolo quit, or was he fired?
Well, I mean, it might be a little bit of both. On a call with press yesterday, he actually explained that this is not the first time that he has offered to the board to step down. He offered back in November, and then again in February. On the third time, the board, accepted the offer and said, "Okay, you know what? You're right. Maybe it is time." And I don't necessarily. It wasn't like he was pushed out or really trying to hold on to that CEO role. I think he realized that the criticism against him was so loud that it was actually hurting the company, and that, even if somebody else comes in and executes the same strategy, it would look better from the outside to Wall Street.
So you wrote a column and you asked basically, what did he do wrong? So from your perspective, what did he do wrong?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things he did right, and that was kind of the part of the basis of my column. But I mean, he cleaned up a really messy, chaotic company. The problem was, he's an executor. He's not a product visionary. And there's been a lot of criticism about Twitter over the years that the product is just not where it needs to be, that to mainstream users, to a new audience, it's maybe confusing or hard to penetrate, or with all the social networks available to them today, they don't really have a compelling reason to keep using it. And, Dick Costolo is a guy who can run a business, create an advertising business, and really grow it, which he has done. But he hasn't really made any big product tweaks that have, made a difference in the user growth.
Sure.
And that's really clear in the fact that he's seen 5 different heads of product under him during his tenure in 5 years. So that's a really bad sign.
No, definitely. And you said he grew the advertising revenue, certainly, but he hasn't really grown the user base. I mean, would you think it's fair? I mean, he promised a couple of times, said that they're going to grow user base, and then the numbers did not come out. And so he had to stop promising that. Would you characterize that as something he did wrong? Maybe he shouldn't have started speaking out so early once the company went public about where its user goals would be, and promising certain figures he wasn't able to deliver?
Absolutely. And that's been one of the biggest criticisms from analysts over the years, is that when Twitter went public, they're like, here's our key metrics. Here's what you need to measure our success by. And one of those was increase in timeline views and increase in monthly active users. And when those weren't growing, analysts obviously were a little bit concerned and started expressing those concerns. And so Twitter's answer was sort of like, okay, well, let's change the narrative a little bit. There's 500 million people who see Twitter without being logged in across the internet. Let's look at that number, because that's bigger than the 300 million or so that are actually using Twitter every month.
Now, Wall Street seems to have loved Twitter, and now seems to have fallen out of love with Twitter. Even though their user growth is a little bit stagnant, I think there's clearly a potential for additional growth in the future if they do things right. But more importantly, they're just getting started with their monetization, and Twitter seems highly monetizable, especially given the initiatives that they're starting to kick in. They're starting to have algorithmic filtering. They're starting to have downloads from ads. They're having video ads, all these potential things they can do. Why doesn't Wall Street still believe in Twitter?
Well, I think a big part of that is just profitability. I mean, Twitter, it's impressive if you look at their revenue growth. They have doubled revenue every year that they've been public. I mean, this is still a relatively nascent monetization strategy, and they're really like kicking ass at it. But the problem is that it's not profitable. And even though the losses are shrinking, they're still massive. Like last year, Twitter did, I think, $1.4 billion in revenue, and they lost maybe 500 million. So that's pretty, that's significant. And, you know, the difference if you're going to compare Twitter to Facebook, which everyone does, even if it's not a fair comparison, you know, Facebook has been profitable since the day they went public, and their profit margins are something, their operating profit margins are like 40%, which is, you know, downright gaudy in tech company terms. So, you know, they have a kind of a rough comparison there that they're living up to.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you know, it's so easy and people so frequently want to compare Twitter to Facebook. Do you think that maybe the biggest problem Wall Street has with Twitter is simply that it's not Facebook and they bought into it expecting that it would be?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, a little bit. I mean, and it's also kind of like it's not different enough from Facebook, especially now that Facebook has become a major player in mobile advertising, because at least in the beginning, Twitter had this advantage that they were kind of always mobile first. But that's not really the case anymore. Facebook has shown that it's, you know, 70+% of its revenue now comes from mobile. So there's not really like a huge differentiator. And not to mention, you know, tweets kind of float by your tweet stream extremely fast. And so there's kind of a question around engagement there. I mean, I know Twitter's doing a lot of innovation on their ad side, but that's not enough to kind of overshadow all the other issues that investors have with the company.
Erin Griffith, excuse me. Erin Griffith is at fortune.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Erin Griffith. Thanks for joining us today, Erin.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Google last year launched its Android One program, which was designed to lower the cost of Android phones in emerging markets. Google had high hopes for the program, saying that it could add 5 billion users to the Android sphere. So far, however, it looks like the program just isn't succeeding. Mark Bergen is an associate editor who covers Google search and online advertising for Recode and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Now, first of all, why did Google launch Android One in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of 3 different reasons. Part of it is just, you know, Google has these aspirations. They're going to connect the world, right? And it's certainly important for their business. A lot of the future internet users are going to come from emerging markets in places like India. The second is like they really want to avoid what happened in China, which is Android has just been forked and fragmented, and the operating system is kind of unrecognizable and doesn't have Google's footprint. And so a lot of Google services can't run there. And so they wanted a very like a strong uniform platform where they can get a lot of uniform Google services across Android in countries like India, Indonesia, and Brazil. And the last point was actually just to avoid Facebook, or try to hedge against Facebook rather, because Facebook has done a really effective job of also solving this problem, and they've had some struggles recently. But in places like India, Facebook is kind of the opening portal to the web, and Google wanted to, I think, make sure that they're in there as well.
So how do we know that the strategy is not succeeding?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, you know, if certainly from a sales point, we don't have exact figures, but a lot of estimates is that the sales have just not been very great at all. And a lot of they picked in India, they picked 3 handset makers, local handset makers, Micromax, Carbon, and Spice. And from what I've heard in my reporting, they're not committed to the devices at all. It's a really difficult game selling low-end market phones, and there's just really small margins, and Google's not giving them a lot of volume. So on the sales side, it's not committing. Google will come back and say that, you know, they are pushing the industry forward and are getting a lot more phones on the latest version of Android. But you know, it's not as going to connect the next billion and as ambitious as Google had laid out.
Well, so here's a question for you. You know, it's one question as to whether or not they're succeeding. But another question is whether they even should succeed. And what I mean by that is in countries where data is super expensive, these are the same countries where Google is trying to get these higher end versions of Android into the hands of users instead of these kind of, let's face it, piece of crap phones that are often the only things available to them. And so really that's what it's about. It's about keeping costs low and driving up the performance of those phones. But still, data costs are a big issue there. And even if they succeeded, would this or could this be profitable for Google? I mean, are people in these markets who are paying for every, you know, megabyte of data they use going to be using data-intensive services like Google Now, Google Photos, and all these other things that Google uses to monetize its whole operation.
Right, that's the key question. I mean, it's the biggest hurdle, not just for Google, but for Facebook and for Twitter, for anyone who's trying to operate in emerging markets, is that data is just prohibitively expensive. So Facebook has tried their different approaches. They have internet.org that tries to subsidize the data. They run into some problems in India with net neutrality around that. They also have potential satellite programs. Google has Project Loon. And, net neutrality is a big concern there, especially in India. And there's a lot of programs that Google has had, especially with Android One, where they've tried to subsidize data, and they've tabled those for various different reasons. And a lot of the folks that were working on that have left the company, and I think are kind of dispirited about the lack of progress in those efforts.
Well, I'm sure they'll revamp the program and regroup and come up with a new plan. Maybe they'll call it Android 2. Who knows? Mark Bergen is at recode.net, and you can follow him on Twitter at MHBergen. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Uber, of all companies, has come out with a free mobile game called Uber Drive. Doug McMillon is a tech reporter for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now to explain what the heck Uber Drive is. Welcome to you, Doug.
Hi, Mike. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, why did Uber release a mobile game?
So for a couple of reasons. The mobile game actually, for one reason, serves as a recruiting tool. People who are playing the game are prompted to sign up to be an Uber driver right in the game. And you know that this is kind of one big push for the companies to quickly add thousands and thousands of drivers all around the world. But I think a bigger focus for this game and goal for this game is kind of a bigger problem and challenge that this company is facing as it expands, which is navigation throughout the cities. How many times have you gotten into an Uber, or how many times have you heard a story about someone getting into an Uber where the driver gets lost, takes a bad route, gets stuck in traffic? This is a big problem for Uber, and this is kind of one approach that they're taking to try to help drivers actually learn better directions around the city, which is, I think, a growing problem for them.
So do you think the game would have any appeal for anyone who has no interest in driving for Uber? You know, is this something that someone like me who takes a lot of Ubers but doesn't even have a driver's license would enjoy playing?
Frankly, I haven't played the game myself yet. I kind of saw a demo of it. Frankly, I doubt it. It was made by somebody at Uber who previously worked on Electronic Arts' Need for Speed game, but it doesn't look anything like that. It's a very basic game. You're basically tapping your finger around the streets of San Francisco, trying to move a kind of a car on a two-dimensional map. It looks kind of like a boring game, to be frank. If you are interested in learning better routes around San Francisco, you might be interested in it. But other than that, I don't see a whole lot of kind of wide appeal to this game.
In other news, Christina Warren doesn't have a driver's license. She flashes her passport whenever she gets carded. You heard it here first. So Doug, I
have an ID. I don't have a driver's license.
Okay. Doug, you mentioned that Uber's working on its own Maps program for drivers. Can you briefly talk about that?
Yeah. So educating drivers is one way they're trying to fix navigation, but really the problem stems from their maps and their turn-by-turn navigation. Right now, they are relying. A lot of Uber cars are relying on Apple Maps navigation, which, as you know, I think as journalists have documented the problems with Apple Maps. Google also could pull in Uber could pull in Google Maps directions, but I think Uber kind of doesn't want to rely too much on Google technology for mapping in turn by turn. So Uber actually, is developing its own kind of mapping software and capabilities. They are doing this as part of their research center in Pittsburgh that they set up next to Carnegie Mellon, and they poached a lot of kind of the top Carnegie Mellon scientists and robotics experts. So they're trying to build kind of better maps. That's part of their kind of big R&D investment out there in Pittsburgh.
Well, I'd just like to point out that this is the first story we've covered so far today, and we cover a bunch, I think, where Facebook wasn't lurking in the background ready to take over the world on the topic we're discussing yet. We'll see when Facebook launches its own fleet of cars, maybe all that will change. Doug McMillon is at WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at DMAC1. Thanks for joining us today, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Google launched a new website yesterday to help you choose your next Android phone. The site is called Which Phone. It asks you to tell which activities are most important to you, like, you like photography, you like, underwater basket weaving, and how often and how much time you spend doing these things. Then the site offers 3 Android phones that match your lifestyle with direct links to buy them. Well, what do you make of this, Christina Warren? Is this an attempt of Google to gain control over who gets those sales for Android phones, or do you think this is just purely to be helpful?
I think probably a mix of both. I think this is kind of, they want to take some of this market, right? If they understand that a lot of people are searching for what Android phone should I buy, then they might as well have some sort of offering. And if they can build a tool that can do that, then why not?
Yeah, I ran it, and it told me that I should buy an LG phone, a Samsung phone. It's pretty, exactly what I would expect. They were all very large screen phones, so good guess, Google. That I do like the big screen phones. So anyway, it's a cool service. All right, well, in product update news, Twitter will increase its famous 140-character limit for direct messages only. The new limit will be 10,000 characters. Compare that to Facebook's 20,000 characters or Google's infinite characters. Twitter is quick to point out that this change is not the beginning of the end for the limit on regular tweets. The 140-character limit for regular tweets is here to stay. Christina, I think this is a great idea. There's absolutely no reason to limit direct messages.
No, I think this is brilliant on a lot of levels. One, I think that it helps them build potentially a new kind of social network at the DM level. And I've noticed myself that I'm in a number of group DMs where there are people that I'm in group conversations with that I wouldn't necessarily be in, say, a Facebook Messenger group with. Why? Because we're not really Facebook contacts, and I don't want their phone number, but I would like to have a conversation. So that's number one. I think number two is that this is great for companies that are increasingly using Twitter for customer support, because you can have these longer conversations. And that could actually be an interesting monetization thing down the line too. If you were to choose to opt in to receive direct message, kind of email, offers or that sort of thing from accounts that you follow, there are lots of potential. There's lots of potential here, but I think this is great, and I'm definitely looking forward to be able to have longer, group conversations next month.
Yeah, so am I. I use it a lot for reaching out to people who I want to interview for the show, and I feel like I'm sending a telegraph. Want to interview you for show? Stop. It's ridiculous, and now I could just speak English and talk normally. So yeah, great move, Twitter. Good idea. Well, in other product update news, Google's cloud-based presentation app, which is called Google Slides, now lets you stream your presentations through either Chromecast or Apple TV. I love this new feature because you can carry around a little Chromecast dongle in your pocket if you make a lot of presentations, and you can just walk into a conference room, and if they have an HDMI port in their TV, just plug it in and do your presentation. It's really, I think, a great idea.
Yeah, no, this is great, and it's certainly good for anybody who's had to go through the pain of trying to present when you don't have a dongle to connect to the projector. But if you have an HDMI, for Chromecast, or if there's an Apple TV in the room, then you can just have that set up as opposed to using a bigger, a standard, I guess, projector setup.
Yeah, definitely, and it's not a response to Microsoft's Surface Hub, which is an awesome product. But I think Google does need to do more. No, that's completely different
and much more professional. Yeah, that's what you do if you're doing serious stuff. But for you're going to presenting it for your smaller conference room and wanting to show off a presentation. So many of us at Mashable, we use AirPlay to project our computers that way, and being able to have one step further use to just either use AirPlay or Chromecast to send it directly from Slides is one step even easier.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, we got a little bit more news for you in just a second, but first let's talk about Prosper, the best way to borrow money. Now, Silicon Valley has disrupted all kinds of industries, the taxi industry, the food delivery industry. Lots of industries are being disrupted, and one of the earliest disruptions was done in the loan industry by Prosper. Prosper will let you borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days, and the way they do it is really, really cool. If you want to borrow money for any reason, just go to the site and you simply give information about yourself. Who are you? And then you can check your rates and review your loan options, and then talk about the project you'd like to finance through this loan. Once lenders invest in your loan, the money is directly deposited into your bank account. So it's great. It's a great thing for the investors. It's a great thing for you. And you can do anything with these loans. You can pay off high-rate credit cards, fix up your house. You can buy a car. You can do a green loan for an environmentally friendly project. Let's say you want to install solar paneling on your business. Prosper is a great way to finance that loan. Now, and for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers and listeners a $50 Visa gift card with your new low-interest loan. You can get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days, plus that $50 Visa gift card. So go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer just for Twit viewers and listeners. And I'd like to thank Prosper for their support of Tech News Today. Well, I got a big number for you today, 100 million. That's how many additional users Facebook added to its Facebook Messenger service in only the past 3 months. Facebook says its Messenger now has 700 million users. This is amazing. Now, Christina Warren, one caveat about this, they recently launched a desktop version of Messenger, and I wonder if they're counting the people who are now using it on the desktop. Either way, there's a lot of users.
Look, even if they are, that's still tremendous because that's still using the standalone separate web app. And I think that this honestly, it validates their strategy of separating Messenger from the core Facebook app and making it a separate app, especially when you consider this figure is without even, we were only now starting to see some of the third-party app integrations that they announced at F8. And I think when that happens later down the line, this number is only going to, this growth is only going to continue. Yeah. It's weird though, because it almost makes me wonder, what do they buy WhatsApp for?
Exactly. Well, WhatsApp has 800 million users. What we don't know is how much the overlap is. Instagram has 300 million users. Facebook itself has 1.4 billion users. They have all the users. They have that adds up to
no, they have all the users. I'm being a little flip,
yeah.
but I'm just saying, from when they bought WhatsApp, it seemed to be partially because they were concerned that WhatsApp was going to win this messaging war and that they wouldn't be able to do it themselves. Whereas now, when Facebook, the brand itself, has almost as many users as WhatsApp. Granted, they might go over different demographics. There might be significant overlap, whatever the case may be. I think that's pretty impressive, and kudos to Facebook. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure that they didn't have confidence in themselves. I mean, they've launched a bunch of things that failed miserably.
That's very true.
Poke. I mean, it goes on and on. They had no reason to believe that the Messenger spinoff would be super successful. Exactly. Yeah, we can go on for like 10 minutes on that. Anyway, they succeeded on both counts. So, they're doing really well, I think, for themselves. Good on you, Facebook. In news you can lose, YouTube star PewDiePie is publishing a self-help book in October called This Book Loves You. Felix Kjellberg has 37 million subscribers on YouTube. He has so many subscribers, Facebook's probably going to buy him. And you can too if you follow his soon-to-be published advice. Advice such as, you can never fail if you never try. Let's take a look at his video.
It is the book that changed the world.
Clearly a serious literary work.
Of the human spirit.
Very.
In the same way that Jesus, Gandhi, and Kanye were known to be masters of pop.
Jesus, Gandhi, and Kanye. All right. Well, he is a clown, but he is a successful clown, and he is actually. All of these YouTube stars are coming out with books. I think he's like the number sixth YouTube star, major YouTube star to come out with a book in the last year. So I guess that's what you do. You become super rich and famous on YouTube, and then you write a book. So
and then you do traditional media. You become internet famous, and then you try to parlay it into actually getting featured on more traditional media, more traditional media.
Exactly. And in the world of book publishing, you need a platform, any platform, and you will get a book deal. Yep. That's how it works. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Scott Heath in Albion, Michigan, who posted this picture of his chihuahua, Peanut, on Twitter. Peanut apparently loves Tech News Today so much that she won't let him check his messages on the phone while the show is playing. That's our kind of viewer right there, Peanut. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup or your dog and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Peanut, we're happy to have you as a viewer. Christina Warren, what are you working on now that WWDC is over? What's coming up next?
Just working on a couple of last final follow-up stories from WWDC and kind of get that cranked out. And then probably, trying to dive into probably some of this analysis on all this other tech news that's happened this week, including, the Twitter shocker that hit around the world. I was in an airport yesterday when that news broke, and I was like, okay, got to start thinking about this. Snoop Dogg for CEO, and there are a lot of other people who won in on this game too. So there's going to be some fun to be had over this.
Yeah, and you're referring, of course, to Snoop Dogg's claim on Twitter that he would be an ideal CEO for Twitter.
Yeah.
Gave a bunch of reasons why. And yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, why not? What the heck? Christina Warren is film_girl on Twitter. And Christina, I want to thank you so much for co-anchoring today, and I'll see you next week.
See you later, Nike.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on TuneIn, or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at live.twit.tv. And if you're ever in Northern California, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. Just send email to tickets@twit.tv before you come. If you'd like to help us grow our audience, here's how you can do it. Just post a link to twit.tv/TNT on the social media site of your choice. Tag some of your friends and recommend that they subscribe. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechNewsTodayTV. And you can follow me on all the social networks at elgan.com. Also, don't miss Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every single weeknight. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Brian Burnett. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Monday. See you Monday. You won't see me tomorrow.